to be credible comes with doing the basics really, really well. Like you can't tout about having, the coolest fashion, and then someone tries to buy it on their cell phone and oops, sorry, can't find it, not here. Thought, we say we have 5, we have none. So it's reputational for a retailer as well to do what they say and say what they do, as far as that promise to the customer.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, wherever you happen to be. Welcome back to another Conversations on Retail. We have done with Matt Pfeiffer's leadership probably hundreds of different podcasts over the years, talking about on-shelf availability, RFID, etc. I hate to sound like this is my favorite, but this may be my favorite. What we've been able to do is assemble what I would call the RFID at Retail Dream Team. People who have been involved with this for a long period of time. We've got IT folks, we've got solution providers, we've got merchants, we've got operators all on the call. And the purpose of the day is really to give everybody a behind the scenes about the success that we are seeing at Walmart when it comes to RFID. So before I go too much farther, we're going to have each one of the participants unmute, introduce themselves, and talk just real briefly about the role that you guys had in RFID up to this date. So Dr. Hardgrave, would you like to start us off?
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Bill Hardgrave currently serves as the president of the University of Memphis. And I got started with this when I was a professor at the University of Arkansas in 2003 when Walmart made the announcement. And I'll get into that a little bit later on. But I've been really in this RFID space since the beginning. I guess I'm one of the OGs in the space, but just means I'm old and been around for a very long time. But glad to be here.
You are the OG, no doubt about it. Deanah Baker, go ahead and unmute.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, my name is Deanah Baker, and I lead a consulting company, Deanah Baker Consulting. Yes, I know that's a highly original name. And so I consult with CEOs and brand owners, and I've been doing that for 3 years. But prior to that, I led the apparel team at Walmart as Senior Vice President, General Merchandise Manager, and enjoyed a wonderful 32-year career with the reseller.
Awesome. Thank you, Deanna. Tyler?
Good morning, Mike. Tyler Austin, Vice President of Sales for Zebra Technologies, running RFID for North America. So been in the Walmart space since I graduated from the University of Memphis, Dr. Hardgrave, back in 97. So I've been a piece of either individual contributor or leadership roles. 2010 is probably when I got really engaged in the Walmart RFID space.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyler. I don't know whether I should say Bob Hoheisal or RFID Bob or Hard Hat Bob or what. You got so many titles, but go ahead, Bob, unmute and introduce yourself.
Yeah, a lot of titles, Mike, but they all focus on RFID. Again, appreciate the time here. Bob Hoheisal. I have the privilege of leading Walmart's RFID supplier compliance program. So I help merchants and suppliers transition to RFID technology. We're addressing a lot of the hard questions about some of the hard to tag items, things that have not been tagged before. How do you tag it? Where do you tag it? I try to be a one-stop shop or a source for truth, for answers, for solutions, for our merchants and for our suppliers. And have to say, I stand on the shoulders of some very tall and very famous individuals on this call. And I've been in the RFID space for about 20 years now. So appreciate the time, Mike.
Well, let's go ahead and just dive right into this because this is probably going to be broken up into a number of different video segments because we've got a lot of material to cover. Because when you talk about behind the scenes of RFID at Walmart, we didn't just start it up and do it one time. There was a lot of starts and stops, including Dr. Hardgrave back all the way into 2003. You were involved when you were at the University of Arkansas with the original RFID at the case and pallet level, which is where you and I started working on RFID together. Talk to us a little bit about the business drivers back then, about the technology readiness, and what were some of the industry reactions to standing up RFID at retail?
Yeah, so it did start in 2003. Walmart had made the decision that they wanted to test this technology tracking pallets and cases for their top 100 suppliers coming from the DC to the store. And we're talking about Walmart today, but also DoD at that time had made a similar announcement. Marks and Spencer in the UK had also made a similar type. So there were a few of these across the globe. Walmart really caught everybody's attention, and I just happened to be at the University of Arkansas as a professor there in IT, and was working with Walmart on other projects. And they asked me if I would work on this RFID project as kind of the outside person. They also had MIT involved because the Auto ID lab at the time was doing a lot of the technology work. But what we were going to do then in 2003. The announcement was in June of 2003 that by January of 2005, we wanted those pallets and cases from those top 100 suppliers, again, flowing through a DC, one DC that was selected in the Dallas area to the stores. So, technology was new. It had been around for a long time, but not used in retail DC. So it was really a proof of concept in many respects of, will this thing work? And admittedly, it didn't work that well, right? I mean, it worked, but it wasn't certainly as good as it is today. And so early on, Walmart and me being on that team recognized that, look, the suppliers were going to need help in understanding how do you tag this stuff, right? Where do you put it on the pallets and where do you put it on the cases in particular so that you maximize the read rates? And so the Walmart then funded the lab that we started at the University of Arkansas. When we started, it was to help suppliers figure out how to tag stuff. So we would just get pallets and pallets of stuff. And I have to say, Bob was one of our students that worked at the lab there, and so he got his start, through the lab. So we started down that process, and it was kind of going slow. But working, and we're trying to figure out how best to do this. And so as part of the project, we decided to tag all the cases going from the DC in Dallas to one particular store, 2883, which was there in the Dallas area. So everything going through was going to be tagged, not just the top 100 suppliers, but we put a tag on everything. So we had 4 read points: DC out, store in, transition door, from the back room to the sales floor, and box crusher, right? Keep in mind, these were on cases. And it was one of those, where the light goes on once you start doing this, like, oh, eureka, look at what's happening at the store, right? So we started off pallet and case, but the visibility that we got when these boxes would move out of the DC into the store, out to the floor, and then back to the back room into the box crusher, that visibility, I don't think anybody anticipated what that level of visibility would do for you. And so what we started noticing was that we had issues with execution at the store. Is that we'd say, hey, here's how it's supposed to happen, but that wasn't what was happening at all, right? It was cases would sit in the back room and not get to the sales floor. Cases would make multiple trips, right? We'd see it go out and then come back in, go out and then come back in, go out and come back in. So we spent a lot of time. I spent a lot of time personally in the back room of 2883 with my Walmart colleagues, literally with a laptop going, oh, okay, there goes a box. Where'd it go? Where box is that? Right? I mean, and so another valuable thing we did from the lab was we helped assist with collecting and analyzing that data and read points. And that was really a turning point. Now think about this was 2005, six, somewhere in there. So in the visibility that we got at that time, what we started noticing was the store execution breakdown, the pick list that stores would do, right? Of pick, and now we had visibility on whether they were actually doing that. So that visibility led to a huge study on in-store out of stocks, right? Means you had product in the store, but you didn't have it on the shelf. And it was probably the largest retail study up to that point ever, because it involved, many, many stores, control and test. And again, the insights leading to that, one was we found out about in-store execution and in-store out of stocks. but it led to probably what, Mike, is the biggest thing that's came out of this, early on and has sustained over time. And that was, it led to a sharp focus on inventory accuracy, right? It was about inventory accuracy and how, if you knew what you had, that would drive everything else. And what we found was inventory accuracy was not good. And it was that inventory accuracy moment that then led to that switch in the industry from pallet and case to item level, because the realization was, look, in the supply chain, you can control things in the supply chain, right? You can get to 6 Sigma in a supply chain, right? In the store, you get to no Sigma. I mean, customers and things move around. You can't control the process. And so that was the realization that, look, we got to start at the store and get things right at the store and then move it upstream. And so really that Walmart 2003 beginning led to that 2008, 2009 transition to apparel, where apparel in an item level where we saw Dillard's and Bloomingdale and others then get into it. So that was a pretty quick synopsis, I think, of what happened at the beginning, but certainly started and was driving the industry at that point, no doubt.
Yeah. I remember that vividly because I was with Procter & Gamble at the time, and we were one of the suppliers that Walmart asked to have tagged. And one of the huge ahas for us is exactly what you said, which is we would see potentially displays or features of product come into the back of the store, and we wondered why they weren't selling. And we saw them move to the sales floor and then immediately move back to the back room, and they sat there for 3 days. So we worked with our merchandiser team to get them back out to the sales floor the way they belong. But that visibility, without having to literally go to all these stores to figure out is it on the sales floor or not, was a huge win from a supplier standpoint. You guys were all involved in one way, shape, or form with that original 2003 effort. Any comments about your involvement and what you guys thought about where the technology was going to go at the time?
I was still in college, and I was probably in Dr. Hardgrave's class during that time. So I really didn't have a lot of context in those early efforts. But, I would say from my impression early on, there was something about RFID that just instantly clicked in my head. Even as a college student, I was like, wow, this is different. This is something that's going to transform the supply chain, serialize data, the ability to exchange data between supply chain partners. Like, I was already on board in 2003, ready to go, but just hadn't had a chance to do anything with it yet. So
I think I was in a similar spot. I was a little bit on the outskirts in 2003, but saw the teammates, just the concept of PI accuracy and how much improvement it could possibly have, I think drove the conversation of art of the possible back then.
When we were doing all this at Walmart and it started looking like, hey, we ought to be looking at item level, it was impossible to think about doing that at Walmart, across the store, because there were way too many SKUs. Sam's Club at the time, if memory serves me, had somewhere between 3,000 to 4,000 SKUs. Okay, now that's manageable. So we did item level at Sam's Club when Doug McMillan was the president of Sam's Club at that time, and that was a very telling, good information and good, how it worked across different SKUs within the big box stores like that. And Michael, until you mentioned it, they'd kind of just slip through, the history cracks, if you will, of the importance, because it was, and look, I kind of laid it out in very linear and very logical, but it was neither linear nor logical in a lot of cases. It certainly was not easy through those early years of, does the technology work? If so, when and where and how does it work? And what's the best use cases, and what's the ROI, and how do you get the cost down? There were a lot of questions packed into those first few years that we had to address before this thing could continue on. And really, when we look back in the history of this technology, Walmart has to be prominently featured, because if not for Walmart and their size and their push and their efforts to look at this and willingness to say, oh, we started like this, but we shifted to here. We brought in Sam's Club to look at item level. I mean, Walmart was amazing in trying to look at this from various angles and open to look at it from various angles. Again, rough patches, but if not for Walmart, who knows where we'd be today.
Yeah. Yeah, great point. And from my perspective, a couple, again, this was the first entryway into RFID at case and pallet. Well, here's the one thing that we think we already know. We do a pretty good job of tracking cases. Not a great job. There's obviously errors in that as well, but it's hard to really lose a big box. Once you break that box open at a store and you get the eaches out, that's when the inventory accuracy really became an issue. So I think that was one of the realizations. Now, the reality, and I don't want to quote too many numbers here, but the tag costs were extremely expensive. And they were huge. I mean, the tags were that big, Michael, right? They were enormous. So the technology had some maturing to do in terms of performance and cost, et cetera, versus where we are today. And it's much more economical to do that. So to me, number one, it was case and pallet, and we realized the item level was going to be the big opportunity. Number two, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I have not ever seen any initiative like this be successful driven from a tech perspective. It has to be business driven. It has to be tech enabled. And to me, we'll get into that with Deanna here in a little bit. That to me is where the money is. It's got to be because driving this just to see the tech work wasn't gonna be sustainable. Let's talk about 2010, because we already kind of concluded that case and pallet was great, but it wasn't level. We got to get down to the item level. And Deanna, you were a merchant in the 2010 timeframe, and Walmart took another run at RFID at the item level, specifically for certain parts of apparel. I believe we did blue jeans and t-shirts, socks, and underwear. We did tires. We did electronics. We didn't do whole departments. But we did see some very positive improvement in inventory accuracy in sales, but it really wasn't scalable because of the cost implications. So you led that from a merchandising point of view. What were some of the challenges that you heard in the industry just because of the cost of the tags at that time?
Well, immediately as a merchant, you start thinking about which items can I afford to have this discussion. And it didn't matter if the supplier picked it up or if we did, because I knew it would find its way into the cost of goods being that expensive. And so it kind of made sense for denim, at a $20 ring. Did not make sense on, a pair of socks or, package of underwear. So I would say we were approaching it as just a test and learn. And I would also say internally, we were not ready. We were not ready. We were not disciplined enough in our assortment to be able to apply it to everything. So the fact that we led with, the denim, t-shirts, larger packs of socks and underwear was because that was the most constant assortment that we had flow on 365 days a year. And so that was kind of the mentality for us at that time was let's learn, let's understand what it can do, but this is really expensive.
Yep. Absolutely. And of course, from an operations, I'm going to put Bob on the spot. From an operations point of view, now I've got to somehow train a hourly associate at Walmart. This is tagged in the same department. This is not tagged, and this is not tagged, and this is tagged. And so you got to somehow figure out different processes for different types of product in that particular department. Bob, that created real problems for the associates trying to figure out what's in scope, what's not in scope. What do I do for this item? What do I do for this item? And I think that was when, Walmart said, we're going to go ahead and ask these suppliers to tag everything in the department, even though from an ROI standpoint, some of this stuff may not exactly pay out, right?
Yeah, I mean, Mike, it's got to be. I mean, there's a human component, right? We're people led, tech enabled, right? So it's up to our operators, it's up to our associates to execute this in store. And RFID is not an intuitive technology. I'm just going to come out and say it, right? Like it is mysterious. It's spooky. It does all these kind of weird things, but it's just, and that's why I love it. I mean, it's just kind of magical, but it's got to be easy, right? It's got to be easy for the associate, and you got to figure out a way to like make sure that it just seamlessly integrates into their daily routine, right? And so when you have your team like looking like you're saying out there, right? I've got this merchandise. I got to get it to the floor. I got to serve the customer. But now I got to figure out is this tagged or not tagged? Do I do this? Do I do that? With the size and scale that Walmart has, just about any combination of rumor mill or myths or things, it just proliferate, it just kind of expands throughout all our stores. And so it's got to be something simple, right? And so when you look at the simple, like the processes that our associates go through on a daily basis, right? Like counting merchandise, need accounts, zoning, price changes, all those things. Like RFID just has to be something that just seamlessly kind of works its way into it. And really, you hit the nail on the head. Really, it's we manage merchandise in our stores by department, right? And we have department level leadership that's out there, making sure that things are out there for our customers to buy. And you can't have people doing mental math. You can't have them having like a mental checklist that says, oh yeah, Wrangler, and then and then George, and these are tagged, but these aren't tagged. And then what happens when you expand? What happens when you start to put more product tag, right? And now it's this constant game of communication, and people don't know, is this tagged or not tagged? Anyway, long story short, the department level mandate or requirement, I would say, really kind of took away all of that, right? Because you could segment different departments like the home or the apparel pad and say, and here we're using RFID, and we're using RFID only, and it's the only process that we're using for adjusting on hands and making sure our inventory is correct. Okay, got it. That I can do, right? That I can execute. And you can have, sporadic items that are out there on the sales floor that aren't tagged, that may have a different process, but overall, the overarching process needs to be homogeneous. It needs to be the same. It needs to be repeatable. It needs to be simple, right? And so that's what you get with that department level type of requirement. Now, price floor and the AUR of the item and some of those factors that kind of go into it. I think overall from a department level, you kind of get this wash, right? Where some items, man, like those 99-cent gloves, ooh, that hurts, right? Putting a tag on those. But jeans would tag all day long. Basics we can tag all day long and still not have a problem, So it's not just the technology. And I think that was maybe one of some of the things that we underestimated early on in this journey was, it's not just about the technology. It is the technology has to be seamlessly integrated into the life of the associate, where it's just simple,
Correct.
Awesome. Well, let's switch gears, because in order for this to work, we have to have hardware, we have to have software, we have to have labor, we have to have tags. Solution providers played an extremely important role in this thing. And Tyler, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot, because as a solution provider, RFID continued to innovate, even though cost challenges, et cetera, et cetera. So what exactly, for example, for Zebra is a world leader when it comes to RFID technology. What kind of ways did you guys continue to innovate, even though this wasn't quite ready for broad adoption yet, because it plays a very important role in where we are today?
Yeah, so Mike, I think when I think about that, there's probably two things. One from a hardware standpoint, and then where we focus on from a customer standpoint. Man, in 2010, if you remember the device that was out there, I think the nickname was the Claw, because it had that big thing out in the front of it, right? Which at the time gave an interest from an associate standpoint, gave them something to aim at. But really what you've seen in the last 15 years is probably integration of RFID read and print capability across a platform. There's devices that we have today that look like a cell phone, and you couldn't tell that it had an RFID reader unless you either knew about it or, we actually have RFID written on the backside of it. And so if the more devices that we have RFID in it, the use cases seem to be a little bit easier, either the claw device go into something you can't really have a reader on it, to wearable type devices. And even the print. Print doesn't get a lot of exposure, but the ability to print, like in a manufacturing space, it needs to happen at speed, right? In 2010, we probably had just one printer that could do such a thing. Today, I'd say most of our portfolio has it, but the printing at speed is something that's definitely relatively new, and has to happen. So, and then I think from a strategy standpoint, we focus on the customer journey, right? There's customers that when you first start talking about RFID, they tend to go to the mobile, just like Walmart did back in the day, right? It makes sense. It's the most cost effective solution out there. It fixes a business problem of increasing PI accuracy, which is great. And then you start hearing from customers that are a little bit more mature and go, hey, how do I know that the product is in the back of the store versus the front of the store? Right. And so then we tend to see choke points and things that really Walmart first started off in case and pallet, down to the individual product line. So that use case of knowing, do I need to have it in the front of the store, is yet another business case we end up trying to solve. And then probably the nirvana of RFID would be fixed RFID infrastructure inside retail environments. So in the business case behind that are typically customers who think about e-commerce, right? And having the ability to know on-hand accuracy right now versus I did wanding, yesterday or last week or whenever that ended up happening. So I'd say those are the two big focuses, making sure the technology is basically throughout the portfolio and easy to access. And then, let's help the customer through their journey of RFID as they mature.
Yeah. And I think that transition from, there are still retailers out there that'll use handhelds because they have small environments, cycle counting a couple times a week, not a big deal, et cetera. And then you got retailers that literally have a huge platform of RFID across the box like Walmart does. And so for that, knowing what you have and where it's located real time. And the other big use case I'm seeing in the industry is asset protection. Knowing what you paid for versus what you received from a back receiving standpoint, and then knowing what got paid for that left the store versus what didn't get paid for and left the store. Because the reality is, Bob, the on-hand accuracy drops from 95 down to the 50s real quick because of these kinds of edge cases. People are like, well, why is our on-hand accuracy 50? Well, we don't know. Without RFID, with RFID, we can finally tell you it's because we didn't get what we paid for, or we didn't get the right assortment, or here's the stuff that left the store that we never got paid for, right? So Dr. Hardgrave, you spent still a lot of time when Walmart sort of hit a pause on going big into RFID, but you continue to work with them in terms of influencing the leadership that this is the right direction. Any comments about how some of those conversations went to re-engage Walmart in the RFID item level initiative?
A couple of things I want to mention is, listen to the conversations, from Tyler and Bob, in particular for the last couple of minutes. First of all, for all the listeners, we've actually said PI on here a few times. If for those outside the Walmart world, that's perpetual inventory, which is what the system says they have on hand. So that's just the system inventory count. So for those of you not in Walmart world, that's what PI means. So just wanted to put that out there for your listeners when they're tuning into this. I want to talk about a couple of things though that leads to this idea of the management and how they look at it. And I want to go back. Early on, we talked about how expensive the tags were, and the form factor was terrible, but they were expensive, right? I mean, they were. I mean, we were seeing $1, $2. I mean, crazy numbers out there. And somewhere, and some of you, many of you on the serving on the panel may recall, there was this idea that came out of the magical 5-cent tag. that tags had to be 5 cents for it to make sense, right? It's like, you got to get tags to be 5 cents, otherwise we'll never adopt it. And I called it the magical 5-cent tag because where did 5 cents come from? It was Tyler hit on this. It's really not about that price of that tag. It's about the payback, right? The ROI. And if your use case would suggest that RFID would provide 10 cents of value, well, then a 9-cent tag is a good deal, right? Because you're going to have a positive return. On the other hand, if your use case says it's only 4 cents, well, then a 5-cent tag doesn't help you, right? If you're looking at it from a pure business perspective. So I think that was an important time as well, because there's a whole big conversation about how cheap tags had to be before there would be widespread adoption. And the other thing, when we look back, and Mike, you hit on this, and Tyler, you did as well, one of the mistakes that we made as an industry, and we saw it unfolding, but it was hard to stop it, is, hey, let's just get a handheld, and that's our reader. And, handhelds work for some use cases, but they don't work for all use cases, right? And as Bob indicated, that when you put that wand in somebody's hand, that's your fail point. Either they'll fail to put it in their hand and do their job, or they just have just do their job, right? But that becomes an issue. Mike, you and I saw this in one of the early trials at Walmart. And I remember, Mike, you and I had a conversation about, what, we're going to just wand it when they come in the back door. And I was insistent, if we do, it's not going to work because they're going to miss something. And when they miss something, now the data is all screwed up and nobody's going to trust the system. So I put those nuggets out there to say that when you're talking to high level management, we had elements of trust. Well, gosh, the data is not any good. Well, it's because, we weren't collecting the data the way we should. Oh, it's too costly. Well, again, it might be at one point, but what's your use cases? Because we know in the history of technology, it's always, it'll always continue to be better, faster, cheaper, right? I mean, over time. So the conversations with the senior leadership at Walmart was more about the use cases, about how it could drive things that they otherwise were struggling with, about the visibility and execution that stores didn't execute the way they thought they were executing. And if they were going to be efficient and drive down cost, then those were some of the things. And Mike, you and I, you and I could give intimate details on one particular meeting that we had with some senior level folks at Walmart, where basically they just said, one particular person said, "Bill, I don't believe anything you're saying." I mean, I'm kind of summing it up, Mike, but that's a fair sum, isn't it? That says, "I don't believe anything you're saying. I don't believe there's a benefit. I don't believe there's value there. We don't need to do this."
And we're already getting all those great on-hand accuracy metrics, so we don't need to explore this stuff. And by the way, it doesn't work in the industry. It's just overhyped. Yeah.
Yep.
That discussion painfully, and that's, and we'll get to Deanna in a second, but that was Deanna's first question to me, which is, I don't want to just sit here and remember what I remember from 5 years ago. I need to relearn, because the industry, I think, has adopted and morphed and done some things. And one of my favorite sayings, and Dr. Hardgrave, you've heard this before, is it's not what you don't know that hurts you. It's what you know that's not so. Hey, I remember this from 5 years ago, so it's still got to be true.
Right.
Technology area, absolutely not. It changes every day, much less 5 years goes by and tag comes down and things become more feasible. So we have come to a pivot point where Walmart has led the industry, started and stopped RFID several times, both at the case and pallet level, as well as the item level, as well as Sam's Club. And we recognized, for the time being, there has been a pause in that work. And really, as I mentioned before, I really believe that this is not a technology project. This is a change management project. It's a fundamental change. And in order for that to be successful, in my opinion, it has to be led from a business perspective, either operations or merchandising, not from IT. So, Deanna, I'm going to turn it over to you, because to me, the RFID story really didn't start with technology. It was really a real business problem. And you were at the time Senior Vice President of Apparel. Why don't you walk us through kind of the 2018, 2019, 2020 dilemma that you had, which was very prevalent in our stores, and how did you decide that RFID was a potential solution to those problems?
Sure. So if I could step back even a year prior to that, on 2017, we had already hit an inflection point in apparel, and we had enjoyed fantastic sales growth. I mean, I couldn't have asked for better. But in the quest to keep growing sales, the merchants had added too many SKUs, too many programs within their dollar budget, but the SKU budget was over what we had capacity to hold rack to rack. So if you are thinking about the store associates, which we were just speaking about earlier with Bob, 4,000 unique stores, unique floor plans, tasked to do so many different things. The floor did not look like any guide that we had sent out. And frankly, you would have been a magician. And it would have taken a lot of touching and retouching to make the floor look right. So we were getting challenged, rightly so, to go on a SKU diet to make sure that every item had a home on the floor, which is different when you have so many different prototypes and so many different store layouts. So unique to the company I love, and Bob, you'll shake your head at this, literally no two floor plans in apparel are alike. And that comes from different generations of different thought processes and layouts and store remodels. So think of a lovely patchwork quilt that you're trying to figure out how to add a disciplined approach to merchandising apparel. That's where we were. So that first year, 2017, everyone bought into the strategy and we reduced our assortment 30% across a $25 billion business. So no small feat, but number one check. That couldn't have happened for the next step to exist. And so here we were cleaned up, but we had no system to manage it. So you're basically checking the checker to make sure everyone's within their budget. And I, in every officer meeting, saw all of the energy and the resources that were being focused on BOPUS, buy online, pick up in store. At the time, it was just curbside, but they were testing last mile delivery, even at that time, on the old grocery app. If you recall back at that time frame, there were two apps. Blue app went directly to a fulfillment center to be filled and shipped to the customer's home. And then you had this idea of curbside and last mile delivery for groceries. All kinds of action was happening there, lots of growth. And I wanted my team to be a part of that. Like, well, why can't someone order socks or a package of underwear or a baby item when they're buying baby food and it goes to their doorstep? I couldn't get arrested. People are like, go sit down. and what I quickly realized is, no one could find their way through the jungle of our floor to find the item to pick for a customer in their allotted time frame, which I think this could be urban legend, but I think it was like 30 seconds. And so people would just zero it out, right? Like too hard, can't do it. And I wanted to be a part of that. So we already knew our inventory was off. And we knew that because our financial plans didn't match that perpetual inventory number. And we had a growing bubble of millions of dollars between the two. So we knew it existed. But RFID, as I look at my competition, they were moving and grooving. I mean, you could find a YouTube video, Lululemon, talking about the virtues of RFID. And I'm like, well, gosh, all right, I don't have $100 leggings, but obviously there's goodness here that I need to understand because I had no other recourse. I wanted to be a part of where the company's focus was going. And this was one solution that I had to understand. So I fortunately was on a trip. And I don't know if I've ever shared this part before with you, Michael, but I was on a trip with Greg Foran and Mark Ibbotson. And I was the last seat on the bus that got to go over to Spain and tour Zara, which was the coolest, I call it the Willy Wonka of fashion I've ever seen in what they do in that building. but they were using, their own version at the time, which also included theft deterrent. But it brought up this conversation between the three of us. And that's where the ping pong of, we've tried it before, it didn't work. Well, let's go check it out. And I'm over here like, I need help. Like, I need some solution. I got the green light from Greg to go try and find, out more about it. And they allowed us to put together a cross-functional team, because obviously I didn't know a thing about it, just that I desperately needed a solution. So there was a considerable amount of time that then went into educating the team. We flew to Auburn University, saw how tickets were made, what it could and couldn't do based on the infrastructure that you wanted to invest. So educating our team, getting everyone on board, then the supplier partners had to be brought on board. And I think that they were excited by the idea of, you're already holding me to an in-stock, Deanna. Well, this is going to be a real in-stock. We're talking about, once we get rid of the ghost inventory, the phantom inventory that really wasn't there, just on paper, that you would see your orders go up, your sales would go up, and we're going to have a much more efficient relationship in our dialogue. So got the suppliers on board, and then we had to negotiate for the cost of that ticket. And I would say 99% of them said it's worth it, especially when we talked about, Bob, the amount of investment in millions of dollars and people that Walmart was going to have to create a store process and the technology to read the tickets, and bring all of this together. So we did it. It took about 2 years to flush through the unticketed inventory to the new receipts coming in ticketed, and then cleaning up the residual of our evergreen items with RFID tags. So we had a lot of working sessions going on. Store operations was a biggie, because we've already talked about how much and how many different things our store associates were having to do. And we had chosen, what we got the green light on for was the handheld readers. So it was utilizing the store labor, creating those processes, almost a gamification of wanding, where they would have to scan a floor with a wand. And once all the racks were lit up green, they knew that it had received the signal. And that was a solution, which, optimal, probably not, but I can tell you internally at the company at that time, we were deliberating, because we had so many projects, so many capital expenditure things that needed to be addressed, and all were important. Do I say yes to something that feels like an 80% optimal solution, or do I get put again on the shelf because no one has the money or has confidence that paying for the store infrastructure will be the same technology 5 years from now? And will we have wished we had waited? So we said yes to the handheld, and certainly glad we did, because that was good enough to prove out the benefits of RFID. So lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the technology team. During this time frame, a pandemic happened. We could have stalled out during a pandemic. We had a changing of the guard with CEOs, right? So we had to almost do a little bit of circling back and bringing, everyone back into this conversation. But we launched it, and we were able to go live, I believe, fully early 2021. And I remember the day it went live, we saw a 30% drop in our inventory, the perpetual inventory. And that was just amazing. It was almost vindicating, because we knew it was there. We couldn't prove it. Now we could prove it. And so then the conversation started switching to reporting. Well, which stores are following the process? Which ones aren't? You're still getting a lot of outs, nil picks, we called it. Why are we getting nil picks? What's wrong with our process? And so then we started the refinement. So, Mike, that's where I will leave the conversation during my journey with RFID. The only thing that I'm extremely well, not the only thing. I'm extremely proud of a lot of things, but that it's a lasting goodness that the company has gone on to move across other businesses. And this audience probably doesn't realize this. I'm sure Bob knows it, but apparel, or fashion, as they call it today, is responsible for about 80% of the SKUs in a supercenter. And you're like, 80%? No, it can't be. Yeah, we change 4 seasons a year. Every program is size and color. One program can be 60 different SKUs. And so when you think about the fact that we were able to do this for what I would call the most complicated category in the box, then paves the way for other things to like refine it and make it even better and go on down that journey.
Now, Deanna, that's a great synopsis of exactly where we were. And just for giving credit where credit was due, you were involved with the 2010 implementation when tags were 15, 20, 25 cents, et cetera. You could have immediately went, no, it's too expensive. We don't want to do that. We got to find another way. But you didn't. You went back and say, I don't want to believe what I learned before. Things have changed. So let me go do the research. To me, that was a pivotal change in your part going, I still have a problem. The solution in 2010 is too expensive. It didn't work right, et cetera. Let's see if things have evolved. And obviously things had evolved for sure. So, and Bob, I'm going to put you on the spot. Of the results of that have not only led to this technology being used for fashion or apparel, but obviously other parts of the box can also benefit from this technology. Anything you want to kind of share in terms of the benefits as well as the expansion that you guys have led?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I never told you this, but thank you. There's a lot of bold decisions that were made back then. There's a lot of, hey, we're going to try to do this again, conversations. Like, I can only imagine what pressure you felt, trying to come back to the, getting a seat back at the table and trying to land this ship yet again. But man, couldn't thank you anymore. I mean, more for your work that you've done, kind of paving the way. And yeah, you're exactly right. Like apparel, no offense, don't take this the wrong way, has been a black hole in the store for decades, right? The hardest category to manage. Just like, we're kind of holding on by the seat of our pants, so to speak, we'll just throw it out there and hopefully we sell it. Right. But now we've transitioned to a place where we used to be stack it deep and sell it cheap. And now it's all about precision inventory. Online has caused us to go back to the drawing board and sharpen our pencils and be like, we've got to do a better job at this. And when you rip the Band-Aid off, you don't know really what's underneath there. Like, I think that was kind of the big aha moment for the entire company, was like, we just didn't know how bad we were. We had assumptions. We would tell ourselves things and we'd kind of believe it. But then like data speaks for itself and it takes the emotion completely out of the equation. And when you just look at the data, like, you have to follow it where it goes, So, massive success in apparel. Like, can't even tell you like just imagine if you were an associate going out there on the sales floor and just looking at that apparel pad and going, wow, I know it's off. I know it's wrong, but what do I do about it? Right. And now we give the tool to an associate that says, okay, tell you what, we got a tool now for you that in about an hour and a half to 2 hours, you can do a complete count of every single item and have 95+ % inventory accuracy in this whole area. It's just such a game changer, the learnings that we had from apparel, the things that the assumptions that we made that we came out on the other side that we learned from have just been paramount in us moving into general merchandise. And obviously the desire for the business is that we can do this in an area like apparel. Holy smokes. Can we do this in electronics? Can we do this in home? Can we do this in sporting goods? Can we do this in toys? Can we do this in outdoor living with patio furniture? Can we do this with other parts of the business? And the answer absolutely is yes, And so, we've learned that this is no longer a science experiment. Like the data is out there, it's proven, the facts are what they are. And it's not just a Walmart thing. I mean, it is a global shift in retail to this precision inventory model that honestly online has forced us to get better, And now there's still some miles to go there, right? And there's still more learnings that are happening. And as we continue to expand into general merchandise, there's a lot of things that we're learning, like just product types and packaging and merchandising and fixtures and all these things, variables that come into making this solution work. And you can't have any pride in this game. Like, you've got to be able to react, learn fast, and pivot and make a decision and go forward. So the journey with general merchandise is not over. It's funny because when we've been in this industry long enough, Tyler, like, how many times have you knocked on someone's door and said, "Hey, I got this RFID thing and it's going to change," right? Like, how many times that door just slammed just right in your face, right?
A lot.
It's a 180 shift. Like, it is no longer it's no longer a sales pitch to try to get someone interested. Like, people are bombarding me constantly with, "Hey, can we do it for this? Can we track this? What if we did this?" Right. And that's the beauty of it. I mean, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. The room is the smartest person. Right. And when you start getting all these business leaders in and you give them a technology that enables this precision counting and location and all these things, and just, then they start coming up with the use cases. Then they start to drive the ship. Right. And so it's no longer, Deanna and Mike, you're a small but mighty team, trying to push this forward in the world's largest retailer. It's 180 degrees now. Like, I've got people coming out, "Hey, can we use this to track RPCs? Hey, could we use this to help us organize shopping carts in the parking lot, of all things," right? Like, it is becoming ubiquitous across the entire business. Just serialized data and yeah, we can tag it. And now we have such an interest in this area where, some of these edge cases, some of these things that were just undreamable, or undoable, a few years ago, are now coming to fruition. Mr. Teitelbaum, I'm sure you are ramping up production. You are getting innovative. You're putting your innovation hat on, and it's not just about the tags. Like, it's smart packaging, right? And we're seeing a complete evolution in that, right? So, first step, just give me a tag on it. I don't care what it looks like, just throw a tag on it. But Deanna, packaging sells merchandise, and it is not something that is a minor detail. And the amount of work and labor and money that goes into making and crafting a brand and a packaging that resonates with a customer, like, that's a lot of work. And, we don't want to just put a white sticker on top of it and say, "Done, we got it," right? Like, we were doing store tours yesterday, and I'm starting to find more embedded solutions, right, where the tag is like in the cardboard. Like, you can't even find it if you wanted to. Like, it's just part of the packaging, and that's where it's all going to. It's a smart packaging solution, right? And so it's just really exciting just kind of seeing where things are going. There's not a single place you can go in the home office today and not hear the word RFID said by somebody. Like, it is a hallway conversation. It is happening in meetings. People are thinking strategic about it. And it's also, it's where this thing where you kind of get this momentum, right? Where the momentum just kind of takes on, right? And it has a life of its own. And, I couldn't do the job that I'm doing by myself. It's the whole company. It's a mind shift where we're like, okay, serialized data. Got it. Wow. We can get down to the exact item and know exactly what we have in our stores. Now we're starting to talk about, what does it look like in our distribution centers that have item level visibility on flow? Like, we've never even entertained that type of conversation before, but now this technology is enabling it. And, I've said this before, we view RFIDs not as a one-trick pony. It is a platform. It is a platform that enables so many things. And the great news is, once you start getting tags on products and you have the infrastructure, you just start layering more benefit, right? We just rolled out Find It this year. So now associates can find merchandise. And, I talk to my colleagues sometimes about this, and some people are like, "Well, I don't know if that was really a good project to launch." And I'm like, well, find it is a perfect example that shows the magic of RFID and puts it into an associate's hands that gets them thinking about this, right? And it gets them, better understanding of how all this works and what could we do with it. That's the exciting thing. Like, we've done so much. I can't wait to see what happens in the next 5 years. It's just going to be incredible.
Wow. Bob, that's an incredible testimony for all the great stuff that you're doing inside of Walmart. Just one additional kind of point that I'd like to ask you to make. You've got Dr. Hardgrave on there, who's basically representing the industry and the Auburn lab, et cetera. You got Tyler on here from a hardware perspective. We're not doing this by ourselves, right? This is a whole industry effort. Any perspective about the importance that these industry players have in our future solutions? And if you had to give them a charge for what's looking ahead for the future, what help looks like from your perspective, what would that be?
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. It's a whole group effort that makes all this stuff come to life. And we have playbooks, we have standards, we have things that we've set out there for suppliers to meet, the expectation wise. But it's the title bombs of the world that are coming up with the innovative packaging, right? Like incorporating a tag into the corrugate, making it a purposeful piece of the packaging and not just an add-on or a secondary thought. You've got Tyler on here who's looking at fixed infrastructure and the reading solutions and how do we gather that data and a challenge I'd have for both of those individuals is obviously cost is what's driving a lot of this, so getting reader costs down, making the reader technology more accessible, making it mobile, right, making it fit into the everyday life of the associate. Tag cost has come down significantly. But there's a whole other category of items that I want to put RFID on that are sub $1. And so I need stuff that's even cheaper. I need stuff that's even lower cost. I need stuff that from a readability standpoint, we're going to have an ecosystem of technology in our stores and clubs and supply chain, right? So it's not just a handheld. It's not just an overhead. Like, it's going to be wearables. It's going to be stuff that's part of it's in your cell phone, right? Like, all those things are going to work together to really kind of create this Internet of Things vision that we all have. Deanna, you're out there speaking and consulting with CEOs, and you're an influencer telling your story about the experiences you've had, and you're basically giving a testament that, like, this is not a science experiment anymore. This is real. There are real benefits. And actually, if you don't get on the bus, you will be left behind and your competition will cruise past you. And, once the hardware and when the hardware is in place, software is just an incremental tick, right? Like when you start talking about creating new functionalities, like when we rolled out the Find It function, well, that was just another little layer that we added on to the associate app experience, right? We're getting ready to walk into a world of artificial intelligence, and I'm not trying to be, try to predict the future, but just imagine if you did have an artificial agent that was looking at serialized data across an entire global supply chain. What value could we find? Where I guarantee you there will be monumental insights and learnings and efficiencies that are gained and automation that comes from it that makes all of our lives better and brings the cost of everyday goods down for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
That's the end goal. We want people to live better, save money so they can live better.
Awesome.
Bob, I would even add for the few players that haven't, adopted RFID, it's reputational as well. Yeah. And I was just speaking to someone the other day about, Walmart's strategy currently, and you've seen the new commercials for apparel now called fashion, is because they want to become a fashion destination. To be credible comes with doing the basics really, really well. Like, you can't tout about having, the coolest fashion, and then someone tries to buy it on their cell phone and oops, sorry, can't find it, not here. Thought, we say we have 5, we have none. So it's reputational for a retailer as well to do what they say and say what they do, as far as that promise to the customer.
Absolutely.
Yep. And I actually see a day, and it may be here already, and not to put any retailer, down, et cetera. If you're not leveraging RFID for at least your fashion or apparel business, I wonder how long you're going to be around, because you become relevant, right? If I can't literally Dr. Hardgrave calls it ROBUS, research online, buy in store. I want to log on, see if they have my size at that store. Yes, they have 2 of them. Order that, go pick it up. You better have it, because if you don't, I'm disappointed and I may not come back again, right? So it's almost that you've got to have that level of accuracy and knowing what you have and where is it located, or people are going to start. At the end of the day, people now have this on their hand. They can get it anywhere they want to. They are not necessarily retailer loyal. They are loyal to the product. And so that's the big transition and shift. Dr. Hardgrave, I'm going to turn back to you, because you've been doing this for 20 plus years, 25 years, et cetera, just like a lot of the folks on the phone have. You got to be thrilled with where the industry is right now and how far they've come. It hasn't been a smooth highway the whole time. It's been a lot of dirt roads and potholes, et cetera, that we've had to go through, but we're in a really good place from an industry standpoint. What do you see the future as? Give us your perspective of where do you think RFID and retail for the future looks like?
Well, I am pleased. I mean, it's interesting. It has taken a long time, and I've had great people like Bob who worked at the lab, and many people listening may know the folk, Justin Patton and Senthil Kumar at the lab, who have worked for me for 20 plus years. They started for me at the University of Arkansas and moved to Auburn. I mean, these guys are amazing. And I told them both, because they were graduate students at the time. Justin was the first student I'd hired. And I said, when he wanted to go to work full time, it's like, Justin, look, this lab's going to be in existence for 5 years. And then it's either going to happen or it's not going to happen, but you better need to be looking for a job, right? Because this is not going to be a job for you long term. And here he is 20 plus years later. So thankfully, I mean, lucky for Justin and others, I was wrong about how long it's going to take, because I really did think this was one that was either going to take off or it was going to just kind of fade away. And, we've talked about a lot of the things that kind of were starts and stops that, from technology to other things, but we're now, to the point where, as you were all just talking about, RFID becomes table stakes. Right. If you're not doing that, right. And you think back, to the early 90s, and when the internet was coming out and, companies were saying, well, do we really want to have this? Well, if you don't have, if you're not a player on it, on the web now, if you don't have your stuff out there, you don't exist. Right. So I think it's going to be table stakes. What I'm really looking for now is an expansion across categories. And Bob talked about this a little bit. And it's interesting. We, for so long and inappropriately, we viewed RFID as a project, not RFID as an enabler to other things, but RFID as a project. And by the way, that was one of the things which caused it would fail. Is RFID. This is you're doing an RFID project, and actually become a 4-letter word, right? Oh, you're doing an R project, right? I mean, it was really bad, as Bob said, right? You get the door slammed in your face, but because we're looking at it from a technology, and Mike, you hit on this, but when it started shifting to, well, how do we reduce our out of stocks? How do we increase our in-stock position? How do we make the product available? How do we get inventory accuracy so we can confidently tell our customers that we have 4 in stock and we know where they're at, right? And it's an enabler from that. And that shift really made all the difference. And so it's table stakes. And, Bob, you mentioned about, well, we got to get the technology down to where, you can put it on something that costs under $1. One of the things that we've also, in looking at RFID as a project, have forgotten basic retail practices and theory. We routinely in retail, right, sell products for less than what we could or lose money because we know those other benefits that they have, that, the loss leaders pull people in. Well, you know what? We're going to have some products where it doesn't make sense to put that tag on there, but we need to, because that product is complementary to another product, or it's going to bring others in, or having that visibility leads to that. And we have forgotten about all this other retail theory to come in and think about it through that lens, not just the price of that tag. And as we get more mature in our thinking about this as a tool, I think we'll see those type of things. But Mike, one of the things we have to do is we've got to expand RFID across the entire supply chain, from the point of manufacture all the way to the store. Rightfully so, we focused on the store because that was the biggest opportunity, and now we're pushing it back upstream, but we have to get it all the way to point of manufacture. Otherwise, we're leaving money on the table on the benefit that it brings to every supply chain partner along the way. And that's our emphasis. And by the way, that's our struggle right now, is getting every player in the supply chain to participate.
Kind of ironic that we started RFID at the case and pallet level, flowing product through the supply chain, stopped, pivoted, got down to the item level, and now we're going back to the supply chain again.
We've come full circle.
It came full circle. We were just way too early before our time, for sure.
A 20-year circle, by the way.
And by the way, just a shameless plug for the Auburn RFID lab, which started as the University of Arkansas. Justin and I talk frequently, and one of the things he said is, we started with 2 people as the employees. They have now over 100 people, most of them as students,
Right,
working at that lab, that are doing real life, practical retailer projects out in the real world. Nothing about academic, putting the academics down, but actually getting to work with real life companies and being able to place those students within the retail community because they've got experience with RFID, which is fantastic.
yeah, incredible work there.
Yep. Tyler,
Mike,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to add one comment to talking about moving upstream with RFID. And we all know the strategic changes, country of origin strategies that are taking place with retailers and suppliers where products are being produced. Perfect time as you're breaking through a lot of the legacy methods of doing things, to really have those discussions and make this part of the discussion and the solution. When you move that manufacturing or your fabric is coming from a different source, it's an opportunity to squeeze out additional cost as you're trying to make some of these country of origin shifts. So to me, it's extremely relevant now, breaking through old paradigms already to include this as part of that conversation.
Great perspective. Great perspective. I think the other one, and Bob mentioned this as well, we're literally putting a unique serial number on every single selling unit. And we go, okay, well, what do I do that? Well, one of the things you could do with that is that whole product authentication. Did this really come from Nike, or did it come from somebody else who just stole the Nike swoosh? Well, with this technology, Nike can go, here's all the lists of serial numbers that we manufactured. If you have other ones in your supply chain that don't include these serial numbers, they're fake. So the ability to authenticate product came from the right location, I think, is another huge opportunity. Tyler, over to you. What's the kind of current industry trends from an RFID standpoint that possibly could change how RFID is being used in the coming years? Anything on the radar that looks like its potential implications for retail?
Yeah, since we got to that magical 5-cent tag, I'm not sure if Dr. Hardgrave wants to take actual credit for that or not, but I thought we were done, right? We know that's not the case. But, I mentioned earlier about following the customer journey. And I think the maturity of the market is finally getting to the next step where you're going to probably see fixed infrastructure play a bigger role, right? Bob had mentioned, hey, it takes 2 hours for an associate to do an apparel wanding, right? But hey, if I took that 2 hours times 40 or 3,200 stores, I guess in the super center, that's a lot of time, right? Imagine if all that was done in the background where it just happened, right? So I think you're going to see a lot more retailers look at fixed as they mature in their space. From our standpoint, we've got to make sure that not only the cost of the hardware, but how easy it is to install, right? Because it's not always just the hardware cost. There's a lot of cables being run, and there's a lot of back end support. So we're taking a heavy look at what that looks like on a roll forward. And then I think the other thing for us would be, there's a lot of technologies that we have to be able to read. RFID is one of them. Barcodes are one of them in a retail environment. 2D barcodes are coming around, Bluetooth, NFC, right? There's a lot of technologies that, from Zebra's standpoint, we want to make sure we're aggregating into at least one. So I think you'll end up seeing, well, Sam's Club, has already done it, right, with the arches, with the combination of RFID and computer vision. And then, up in this, as you go up the supply chain distribution centers, the exact same thing, right? So fixed infrastructure on the bigger thing, I think is going to be big as we move forward, taking the labor portion out of those reads, and then the ability to make sure we're flexible enough to read anything that needs to be read. And you think about point of sale, right? The barcode's going to be around for a little bit longer, but we got to be able to make sure that we're reading all those technologies into a single output for the customers. So I think those are the two biggest ones.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective. And I think the other thing that is worth noting, as much as I believe in RFID, I do not believe it's a single solution across the entire retail box. All right. Bob, I don't see us tagging watermelon anytime soon, right? But, hey, he thinks he can do it. That's when you can do that, I get to finally retire because I have
to do it.
There's certain products that, cans of soup at a 75-cent price point. A, they're metal. B, price point. C, computer vision does a pretty good job of that, right? Mm-hmm. But Deanna, where you got an apparel item or a fashion item where I only usually carry one or two, and if I don't have it, I can't switch to something else. That's where RFID becomes a critical place. So I think it'll be more of the box than it is today, but I just don't ever see it. I don't see us doing tagging RFID grapes and watermelons and stuff like that. Maybe I could be wrong, but I think there's going to be a multi-sensor technology, Tyler, with the way you just mentioned it.
Yep.
All right. Well, we have spent some great time together. I really do appreciate you guys taking the time to talk through this. Great success story about the ebbs and flows, the ups and downs of this technology, and really change management, the processing different ways that we now go to market in retail. So one of my favorite questions, just to wrap this up, and I'll start with you, Dr. Hardgrave. Is there any question that I didn't ask that I should have, or is there any closing comments that you have for the audience that you'd like to share?
You actually touched on it, and I'll expand on that a little bit. Just, I do think food is the great frontier, right? I mean, all the other stuff, just in size and volume, food overwhelms everything, and I do think that there's a lot of opportunity there. And we early on we did some work in the regulation around being able to track and trace food. And, 15 years ago, we couldn't do that. Now we can. And I think we have to find ways. And Mike, I agree, it's not going to be a single solution. It's going to be multiple solutions. But to me, I think that's the great frontier because we waste a third of our food stuff. We could reduce a lot of world hunger just by reducing waste. The things that we see on being able to recall. I think the food is just a great frontier. And so I really look for the coming decade to really focus on that area. I think we're going to see great strides there. But I'm going to go back to something I talked about earlier, and that is pushing all the way up to point of manufacture. One of the black holes we have now is the logistics providers are not involved. We get the brand owners, we have the retailers, but when it goes to the logistics providers, it goes into a black hole. We have to light up the entire supply chain for this to work. And then I want to add in something Bob just briefly mentioned, AI. Everything now is AI, but still, you think about if you could light up the full supply chain and you truly had lots of information, good information, Now you're talking about using artificial intelligence to route product, to order product, to direct. I mean, there's so many things that the universe of things that we could do when you have that. In the absence of that, right? If you have these big black holes, AI doesn't work, by the way, because it will try to make something up to fill that black hole. And as we've seen, it's not very good, right? But if you have that data, then the results can be amazing. So that's what I look for over the next decade. I look for food stuff to really take place, get some footholds there. I look for full illumination of the supply chain and how AI really can start playing a role in that.
No, great perspective. And just to build on that, I'm working pretty closely right now with Kroger, and what's one of the things that they want to use is that serialized data to not only say, what do I have and where's it located, but what is the markdown process? What's the age inventory? I'd rather reduce it for a quick sale rather than throw it away, right? So the whole shrink opportunity, et cetera. So you're right. I just don't think that RFID will be ubiquitous across the entire box, but I think it definitely has a lot of strong use cases for food. Deanna, how about you? Any closing comments that you would like to share? Any things that you wish I would have asked that I didn't?
More just a shout out to people who find themselves in leadership roles within a box in terms of technology. Is it's really easy to think that tech is someone else's job and responsibility, and it's not perfected yet, so I don't need to waste my time on it. I've got way too many other things to do. I would just encourage you to be curious, check in, take a pulse check on where it is, and not why you don't need to do it, but how could this, with a few tweaks, benefit my business, benefit my team? And just stay curious because, like Dr. Hardgrave said, it's changing consistently. And if you don't, you wake up a few years from now and you're the last one and you're behind. So just an encouragement to the leaders of organizations to be curious, and it is your job.
And you demonstrated that through your actions in a marvelous way. So thank you again for your important role in really pivoting Walmart to look at RFID yet again. And it's now very, very successful. Tyler, how about you?
Yeah, I think a piece of advice again for people looking to deploy. Bob started talking about is, and once the word gets out that you're deploying RFID in a certain use case, people come out of the woodworks and talk about scope creep, right? So I think the advice would be making sure you're focusing on the solution that you think has the best ROI at first, and trying to keep at bay while they stay interested, keep them at bay a little bit, because you'll get overwhelmed in the people that want to do something with RFID.
Oh, great coaching and perspective for sure. RFID Bob, summary comments.
Oh, Mike, where do I start? I think probably the first thing I would say is, to my merchant and my supplier partners out there, we're on a journey. Like, we don't have all the answers. We are learning as we go along. We're somewhat building the plane while it's flying through the air. There have been some things that we have landed and nailed and just knocked out of the park, and there's some things where, we probably could do a little better job. One of my roles here is helping to encourage suppliers by talking about benefits and what does it mean to them and what does it mean to their business. And I get tired of talking about it, but honestly, I just need to drink a Red Bull and suck it up, because that drumbeat is the lifeblood of the program, right? Like, it's not a one and done thing. It's not a thunderclap. Like, it is just this constant thing, right? And there's so much exciting things that are going to be happening over the next few years, right? Like, I cannot wait to dive into cosmetics. I cannot wait to dive into some of these other areas or categories that just haven't been tagged or haven't had good solutions. Like I said, it's kind of an evolution with the packaging where we start with a white sticker and eventually we get to something that's integrated. we're going to find solutions for pretty much every type of category, every type of product type, and even the grapes, even the watermelons, even that stuff over there on the fresh side of the business. We're going to find stuff for it, right? And again, I'm not just going to throw RFID at everything. It is a multi-sensor approach, but I would ask for a little bit of patience, a little bit of understanding. Rome wasn't built in a day. We are completely revamping our supply chain to be a serialized supply chain, and that just does not happen overnight. We have tech restraints, we have, normal business constraints, things that are happening, right? So, if I were to look into the future or be in the past and kind of predict to the future, I don't think I would have predicted we would be exactly where we are. I think the traction that we've had and the adoption has been phenomenal. I think suppliers are going through a mind shift where 3 to 4 years ago, I think, Deanna, you probably experienced this too, like everyone was looking for an excuse to get out. Like, who do I got to talk to get an exception? Well, you're talking to the person and you're not going to get it, right? And it's flipped around now where suppliers are like, okay, we're going to do this. We have to do this. We need to do this. But how do we do it, for ourselves, right? And so that's another one of the frontiers too, is getting the manufacturers to adopt and tag, getting the transportation providers to have infrastructure. I mean, just imagine if we had this stuff on the ports, right? And as containers are being loaded up on the ships, like that's another black hole where when something gets on a boat, we have no clue where it is and when it's going to land, and that's not acceptable in today's age. Like, we need to be able to have everything track and traceable, right? So buckle up, pack a lunch. We're on a journey here, and we're open to feedback too. Like, there is so many good ideas, so many things that are happening with all our, whether it's suppliers or other retailers. And that's one of the things I actually really kind of enjoy. I really enjoy kind of networking a little bit with the other retailers and brand owners and just kind of get their perspective. What are you thinking of? What's a priority for you? Like, what are you going after? And again, Tyler, I think you nailed it too. Like, pick a goal. Don't, RFID can do 1,000 things, but you're not going to do all things coming out of the gate. Let's pick a couple that are high level. For us, it's always been inventory accuracy. For us, it's always been sales. But I mean, there's so many of the things you layer on benefit wise over time. So, but thanks again for the time, Mike. This has been fun. This is I would say that I'm a student of the topic, and to be here with the thought leaders and folks that were here at the ground level is a real privilege. So appreciate that.
Well, listen, on behalf of the entire industry, this group of folks, to me, is the RFID Dream Team. You guys have been actively involved either in front of suppliers or in front of merchants or in front of operators and in front of the industry, showing how this can be done. And it is a absolute incredible where we are, and more importantly, where we think we're going to go. So on behalf of Conversations on Retail and the University of Arkansas, I thank everybody for their incredible time. Thank you for your participation, and we really appreciate you taking the time to share the story. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.